First, you're wearing the "It's okay to vote no" shirt, which is a segue into the New South Wales abortion bill. Now that has already passed, that's already into law, and I presume you still have some issues with it, and that kind of relates to the religious freedom bill a little bit. But why don't you tell us a story with the shirt and why you are so hard on the "It's okay to vote no" campaign?
Yes, well, I guess in terms of I'm so hard on having the choice to vote according to the evidence, but also to give people all the facts so that they can make an informed decision. Now, the story behind the shirt is I thought it'd be appropriate to wear today because we're talking about free speech. Is I'm always a bit like I like to be poke a bit, and I guess you call me a provocateur at some point. And during the postal vote, a lot of people were saying that if you voted no, you were a homophobe or you were a bigot or this or that. I'd been researching the issue of homosexuality and same-sex marriage for years, from a medical and a social science perspective, etc. And I thought, I'm going to wear this and I'm going to go running, which I did. And I went running through a suburban park, and just as an experiment to see what would happen. Would I get rocks thrown at me? Would I, And as I'm running along, I wasn't talking to anybody. I wasn't going out there yelling that, listen, vote no or you're stupid. And a guy comes up to me and said, you shouldn't be allowed to wear that. And I said, why not? I said, he said, you shouldn't be allowed to say that. I said, well, you're wearing a Tommy shirt, Tommy Hilfiger. You're advertising him. I mean, you're allowed to advertise that, but I'm allowed to advertise my view. Anyway, we got into a bit of a discussion, and I just wanted to ask him questions about why he thought I shouldn't be allowed to, articulate my views. Through that, I was able to explain to him why I was going to vote no. I asked him, was he aware of any of the evidence, any of the reasons why you wouldn't want to support changing a fundamental, pillar of society? Because whenever you change the fundamentals of anything, you change it. You may not see the outcome straight away, but you're going to see it sooner or later. One of the things I would say during the marriage campaign, when they'd say, oh, it's been legal overseas for years and the sky hasn't fallen, and I would say, but marriage, it's a bedrock of society, it's not the roof, okay? So you're not going to see the sky fall, but the ground underneath those societies may slowly and surely erode away, which is what we're seeing, okay? And you won't see it for decades because it takes time for that erosion to occur anyway. So I would explain all these things to him, and I would ask him questions about his view. And towards the end, I said, David was his name. I said, David, I guess the reason I'm glad we had this discussion is I just wanted you to know that not everybody that votes no is a troglodyte or a knuckle-dragging, subhuman or a bigot. I said, many of us have good reasons for why we vote the way we do. And he said, no, I can see that, Con. And we shook hands, and I gave him my card. I said, I've got a website that's got a lot of information if you want it. So I gave him my card, and he went on his way, and I went on mine. And I think it was a great example of how we should be able to have free speech. So the reason I wore this for this interview was because I wanted to tell that story, because we're in danger of losing that. We're in danger of becoming a society where you have to, go with the popular narrative, and if you dare to disagree, you have the temerity to say that I'm sorry, but what the media, the left-wing media, says is gospel. They want to throw you to the lions in the Colosseum. It's like I just don't think that's the kind of society I want to live in. I don't want my kids to grow up like that.
Now, what's your argument for, in terms of changing the foundation of a society, you're going to see the negative outcomes? Could you flesh that out a bit more?
Okay. Well, see, you've got to look at history, because those who deny history are condemned to repeat it. Okay, and when you look at the history, I'm a believing Christian, but I look at things from a scientific, historical, philosophical point of view. You've got to ask yourself, where did marriage come from? Okay, did it come from the Bible? Well, then, if it came from the Bible, then what about societies that were never Christian? Did they have marriage? Well, it turns out they did. When you look at where marriage came from, the first recorded marriage laws are in Egypt and Mesopotamia. the cradle of civilization. As a matter of fact, the Code of Hammurabi, the first known written legal code, has about 100 different, 200 and something laws on that he wrote for his kingdom, and 2/3 of them about marriage and children. As a matter of fact, one of them actually says that a man, if he leaves his wife, has to provide for the children. That's child support. Okay, and we're talking 2000 BC, all right? And so anthropologists, when they've looked at this, and this is theories. I mean, let's say if you put your evolutionary hat on, what they're saying is, well, for the first several thousand, tens of thousands of years of human beings' existence on the planet, there was no such thing as marriage. And what happened was men would go around, us, despicable males, would go around and father children and leave the woman to raise them on their own. Okay? Can you imagine what kind of infant mortality rate that would have had? Because you've got predators, you've got a harsh environment, males are stronger than females, and yet we leave them to raise, these babies. And these societies realised that unless they did something to stop that, the society wouldn't survive. So in two different places, you've got Mesopotamia and Egypt, which are the cradle of civilization. You've got laws and practices saying that if a man and a woman come together and they have children, they stay together to raise those children. That's marriage. Because I would always ask people, what's the purpose of marriage? And they would say it's about love. Okay, they'll say, oh, love is love. It's about love. You've heard that, yeah? Well, I asked this guy, David, the question, well, if it's about love, let me ask you this. What's so special about the number 2? Why 2? Oh, because, 2 people. But why if it's only about love? And then I'd ask him a question, because he identified as bisexual. I said, well, you're a bisexual, you are. So isn't your love equally valid? If you're born that way, I said, what are you going to do? You're going to marry a man? You're going to marry a woman? I said, you've got to be able to marry either. You see, so I said, I can give you a good reason for 2. And he said, what's that? And I said, because every person that's ever lived has biological input from a male and a female. It takes a male and a female to make a person. Whether you say that, whether it's sperm donor or whatever, you can't make a person without a male and a female, correct? So I said, that's why number 2. And then I asked him, so why does the government care about marriage? Why does the government care who you love? They don't. The only reason governments are in the marriage business is because when people get together and they live together, what tends to follow? Children. Okay? If the male and female don't stay together to raise those children, who ends up having to raise them? The government. Now, governments make poor parents. And that's why you won't find churches, everyone talks about, churches being against this or churches being pro-marriage, whatever. Churches don't collect child support payments, do they? Governments do. So there's very good reasons why over all societies that if you go back, look, and you look through history, all societies have had a couple of fundamentals for marriage. It's one man and one woman. It's for life, and it's to the exclusion of others. Now they'll say, oh, what about polygamy? That's the exception. Okay, kings might have done it, but the common man didn't. The rich, some marriage, some societies have this ceremony, some societies have this ceremony, and they're different. No, they might be different externally. Okay, it's like food. Italian food and Thai food look different, but at the end of the day, it's still got proteins, carbohydrates, and fats cooked together. Okay, that give us nourishment. Correct? So I'm looking at the fundamentals. So you've got meat and vegetable or some kind of organic matter that's prepared, raw or cooked, okay, that's nourished for nourishment. Well, in the same way, the fundamentals of marriage is male and female. For the purpose of children, they stay together, okay, and to the exclusion of others. Now, think of marriage, okay, you've got a camera over there. Think of marriage like a tripod, okay? Stands very well on 3 legs. What happens if you take one of those legs away from that tripod? Is it going to stand? No. So then you don't need the 3rd leg. So The problem why society is in trouble is we've already taken away one of the legs of the tripod in marriage. We've taken away the for life part through no fault divorce. Now, many people know people who've been divorced, and and the toll it takes on children. Okay, so I guess I just wanted to stop us. I mean, marriage is already damaged because of that. I just wanted to stop us damaging it even further. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, let's continue this. I have a couple of questions. The first is, I'd like to understand why you think my position on the gay marriage thing has always been, I don't know why the government's involved to begin with, right? That if people want to have like property settlements or whatever legal kind of things come along with marriage, that I don't know, hopefully I don't know for another maybe 10 years, that they can kind of, whoever they want to be, if they want to go to the government and say we want to share this or we need these tax breaks or whatever, they can do that. And if they want to have like a religious validation, then the churches can decide that. What do you think? Do you think that the governments need to be involved in that process of kind of validating the union between two people, or because when you say that the government raises the child without, if the parents don't, to what extent do you think the government should be involved in that process?
I don't think the government should be involved in marriage law or marriages at all, really, but they are by default because people are people. And you raise a very interesting point. I mean, why I've got no issue with civil unions, you know, or if same-sex couples want to live together. Now, I'll be honest, I'm philosophically opposed to de facto relationships, but the governments recognise them as being, lawful. So, in the same way, the government needs to give same-sex couples those rights as well. So, I'm very much an equal opportunity sort of person. I can be philosophically opposed to something, but if the government does it, then that I accept that, right? So there's no reason why same-sex couples couldn't have de facto relationships, civil unions, whatever term you want to call it garage if you wanted to, okay? But we've got to remember that words have meanings, okay? And this ties into the whole transgender narrative where people are trying to change the meaning of words, right? Marriage has a particular meaning. It always has had a particular meaning. It's one man and one woman, okay? As a matter of fact, I think the first sort of Marriage Act in the Westminster system was in the 1760s or something like that. And it was actually enacted, as I understand it. Now, I'm happy to be corrected if I've got details of this wrong, but my understanding is that...
We have a crack research audience. I'm sure they'll let you know in the comments.
No. But my understanding is that there were scoundrels, because it's again, scoundrels were going around saying to married men were going around saying to a woman that they liked, look, I'll marry you, all right, just to have sex with her. Then when she became pregnant, they would dismiss them, saying, well, I'm not married to you, okay, because he didn't want to raise a bastard child. Well, the government got wind of that, and so that's one of the first places where it became a public ceremony in sort of the Westminster type system. So men couldn't get away with that. So fundamentally, it's always been really about families and about children. Now, if a same-sex couple wants to live together and legally validate their union, they can do that with a civil union. They don't need to change the Marriage Act for that. And you're changing something that for 100% of the population that really only affects 2%, because only about 2 to 3% of people are LGBT. Okay, so I just couldn't see the point in such a wholesale change. And when you look at, and we may not have time to go into, because I don't want to spend the whole interview on this, but just suffice it to say, and if anyone's interested, if you're interested, I can provide you with details. When you look at societies where they have legalized same-sex marriage, over time, other things like sort of divorce rates don't go down. Divorce rates actually go up. Ideas that it's okay for a mother and a father to live together, or man and woman to live together without getting married is okay. The idea that children should do better with two parents, that idea goes down. You see, so it undermines the foundation. It erodes away the foundation, and you only see the consequences of that. You only see the consequences generations later. They legalised no fault divorce in 1975. they didn't see the consequences that we would be spending tens of billions of dollars a year on family breakdown 3 or 4 decades later. Does that make sense? If they knew that was going to happen, they may not have been so quick to do it. You know.
Right.
So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.